This week's sponsor is Anchor.fm. In our experience as podcasters, Anchor is the easiest way to make a podcast. Anchor gives you everything you need in one place for free, which you can use right from your phone or computer. They have creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast so it sounds great, and they'll distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard everywhere: Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and many more. If you're interested in monetizing your podcast, Anchor sets you up with sponsors with no minimum listenership. What could be easier than that? Download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. The Chains of Reason podcast, where we link the chains of reason that affects our daily lives in society and culture, including, but not limited to, sports and politics.
Welcome back to the Chains of Reason podcast. I'm your host, DJ Grand, and this time we have a very special co-host, my daughter, Autumn.
Hi.
And also our regular producer, Ryan.
Oh, I thought I was a special guest. What?
Oh, no, the daughter's always the special guest.
Well, she's like the third co-host. She's, I think, past the special guest.
Oh, okay. I could give her that title. Our third co-host, Autumn. Before we get started, I want to let everyone know how to get a hold of us, and just go to our website at chainsofreasonpodcast.com, and you can listen to the podcast and check out our email and do our social media if you like there too. To begin with, I like to say a huge spoiler alert, because for those who haven't seen this movie, you probably want to come back and listen to it at a later date after you watch the movie. Those who just want to pay attention, you're more than welcome to. We're going to be talking about My Hero Academia Heroes Rising, their special movie that just came out this last weekend. My first question before we even get into the gist of the movie is, isn't this a one big spoiler in and of itself?
The movie?
The movie itself, yes.
Oh, yeah, kind of.
So, I mean, aren't they didn't give any spoiler alerts, but yet they went ahead, because it talks about it's in the future. So I guess we need to let them know that. And that's, I mean, there are some things that if you're a regular watcher of the anime, you truly don't know. For example, Deku is donning some different gloves, correct? Mm-hmm. And there's also a pro hero that you don't even get a whisper of in the anime.
At the beginning of season 4, he was mentioned, but not enough to kind of remember.
What do you mean mentioned? Someone said his name, or you actually saw him?
At the beginning of season 4, when they were deciding what work studies they were doing, they said Tokoyami was going to Hawks. And it showed like a blacked out image of Hawks.
And Hawk is this person, this pro hero we're talking about, that was never ever mentioned before. At least I didn't pick up on that.
Yeah, so, it's a small thing.
So that's kind of a spoiler right there, is my point. So this whole thing is a spoiler by them as well. So let's first talk about the red carpet event, and then we'll give a little synopsis of the movie. So go ahead, Autumn. You're the one who watched the red carpet. What happened? How was it?
It was okay. Basically what they did was they had these two hosts. I don't remember their name, but it's two girls. They were at the red carpet, and once like the voice actors walked down, they just pulled some of them and did an interview, like the most popular and important ones. And they did the voice actor of like Todoroki and Endeavor, and they did Bakugo, Kirishima, a whole bunch of them. And then they sometimes cut back to like kind of like a fan, like 5 minutes where they like talk to fans and ask them like questions and their favorite characters. But like the main thing everyone pretty much wanted to see was the voice actors, not like the fans.
Oh, of course, because that's what they're there for. But still, I think they wanted to show how many fans were there, and I hear there was a lot of fans at the premiere.
Yeah, they had to shut down the whole street at the premiere.
That's a lot of fans. So what was your favorite part of it? Which interviewees did you like the most?
I was most excited for Hawks because his voice, like this is the first time his voice has ever been announced or he's done it. So I was excited to hear his voice, and Bakugo and Kirishima, they're kind of my favorites. So,
Well, I kind of liked Todoroki's attire, or the guy who does Todoroki, his attire.
They all kind of characterize their outfits. Like Todoroki's voice actor, he had a red shoe and a white shoe. Deku's had the red shoes, and Hawk's had kind of like a tan tux, and then had 2 red feathers for Hawks.
Surprised he didn't have some wings, but okay. I did see the one little part where Endeavor, the voice actor of Endeavor, did the old Shoto for Todoroki, so that was kind of funny.
Yeah.
And so you Deku didn't do anything to you because you didn't mention him. So.
Oh, he was at the very end. They left him for last. I was expecting him to be with Bakugo's voice actor, but no, he was by himself. They just kind of pulled him aside, and he almost spoiled stuff, and they were like, wait, no spoilers, and he was like, oh, right, yeah.
I would expect him to be with the voice actor of All Might, because they're kind of like...
Oh, All Might's voice actor was with his daughter, so he kind of went with his daughter and did an interview, so...
Well, so overall, it was a good show?
Yeah.
Was it worth the hurrying up and getting home to watch it?
It was like an hour long. It was good.
So you enjoyed it. Well, that's good. That's great. The only problem I have with seeing the voice actors is now every time I watch it, I'm seeing the voice actors' faces instead of... I used to just see the anime faces, and now I'm kind of getting both, and it's just a little bit going back and forth, but I can handle it. But still, that never happened before I saw their faces.
That happens to me a lot with Justin Briner. He's the guy who does Deku. He's in a lot of other roles that I know. So
his face does not match the Deku voice at all.
Well, that's actually is like pretty similar to his actual voice, so it's funny.
Doesn't matter. It still doesn't match quite.
Yeah, he does a lot of roles that I know. So all I can really picture is Deku, and then when I go back to Deku, I'll hear the other characters.
All right, well, let's move on. Since we did the red carpet, now let's give the anyone who's listening a synopsis of Heroes Rising.
Basically, it was about all Class 1A going to an island called Naboo Island, like alone without any pro heroes. And the island's known for not having any villain attacks, so I guess the Hero Commission thought it was okay to send a bunch of children to an island alone. And so they kind of just took care of the people there, and, like everything, something goes wrong, a villain attacks, and the whole thing was basically about Deku and Bakugo working together.
That was... I don't think it was the whole thing, but that was a major component of it. Well, also, I think a underlying theme is that they were way outmatched by these villains. There were like 4 villains, correct?
Yeah.
And they were way outmatched by them. So alone, there's no way any of them, including the angry Bakugo, could have taken them on by themselves. So the point was that they had to kind of team up in order to win. Otherwise, there's no way they would have won individually.
Yeah, like during like the first time, because there was a first fight, they kind of lost, but the villains didn't exactly win either. But then they all kind of
a standoff.
Yeah, they all kind of like had to team up, but it wasn't planned. So like even Todoroki, who's I would say is the strongest in the class, couldn't even handle it. So they kind of had to strategically plan it instead of
and they had to work together, which normally, with the exception of the agencies, but once you become a pro, you kind of work by yourself, correct?
Well, you can. There's some heroes that do that, but sometimes, like, for example, the first fight ever in the show with that big, huge guy, that those random heroes weren't in the same agency. They just had to kind of work together and trying to do it. But some heroes, for example, a hero, that's a spoiler, I believe her name's Muroko. She's a rabbit hero. And she's kind of like Bakugo, where she doesn't like to work with people. She prefers it to be alone and to do it herself, which I like her. But
well, the point is, in this scenario, when they isolate them on an island, it kind of forces them, when they come up with 4 villains that are well above their pay grade, that it forces them to work together. And I think that was part of the theme, was that it's they had to work together. It's teamwork.
Yeah.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically a quick synopsis of what happens. Before I give my critique, do you have any critiques about how the movie was?
Like what I thought about it?
Was it good, bad? Yeah.
I liked it. It was good. It's pretty much what I expected. I think it was better than the first movie. I liked the fight of two heroes with like Deku and All Might working together because they never worked together like that.
You mean Deku and Bakugo?
No, in the first movie, Two Heroes.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Where they worked together, and that was cool. But then the second movie where it's Deku and Bakugo, I think it's better. I like it more. So.
Well, my critique is the opening was, or the beginning was so slow and boring. I mean, they were walking old ladies across the street. I mean, it was boring. And I could actually understand why Bakugo wanted nothing to do with that. Right?
Yeah, it was slow, but if you generally like enjoy the characters and how they interact, it's like it was fine.
But once it did pick up, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved the battles. I did like Bakugo and Deku working together, even though even in the middle of a battle, he still called him a nerd and told him not to tell him what to do.
But then he ends up doing it. So
this is true, and Bakugo showed his true colors because he just doesn't stop. He's a bully all the way around.
Okay.
You don't think he is?
He's getting better, especially in that movie. He got better.
Slowly getting better. And you sure that wasn't by necessity too?
No.
Oh, you think you really believe that his character is developing to where he's not going to be a bully anymore?
Pretty much. Yeah, he calls him like a nerd and stuff, but like he's done it a lot less. And now in the manga, he sometimes does it, and like Bakugo's speech, but like he doesn't do it as often and not as like hurtful. It's more like just like instinct and jabs, and then they're like, okay, whatever.
So if we do a little psychoanalysis of it, it could be that Bakugo's actually insecure and he's lashing out to stop, and get anyone so close to him.
Oh yeah, well, about that in the fight with Deku versus Kacha in Part 2, that used to be my favorite fight, actually, because you kind of see them both, like, I really like Deku and Bakugo's relationship because, like, how kind of, like, they used to be childhood friends, but they have so many emotions to each other, not just, like, Bakugo at Deku. Like, Deku has, like, bad feelings against like Bakugo and stuff, so like the envy and everything. So Deku versus Kacha, and you kind of see like Bakugo kind of break down and be like, he blames himself for All Might. Like he blamed himself for All Might practically dying, and like on a 15-year-old kid, that's not good.
It's not good, and I also think it wasn't just because I don't think it was his fault, but go ahead.
Yeah, but he kind of blamed himself for like having to get rescued in that situation where he couldn't just get out himself. Like he blamed himself for that broke his pride, and just the whole blame himself for All Might and the sports festival win. He doesn't see that as a win. He never did. So that kind of piled up too. And then just him entering UA and being like, it wasn't good, that it was a reality check of him being like, oh yeah, I'm the best, whatever. But then he went into UA and it's like, oh, there's people that are better than me. It was kind of a reality check, and that broke him too, and it kind of just piled over at Deku, like the only one he could probably understand that,
Well, because the dynamic there is he thought he was like the older brother, and to where the older brother can pick on the younger brother, and he thought he had that right with Deku because he knew him.
Yeah, and then Deku being like, I'm not going to just like let you kind of just punch me or whatever. I'm going to fight back, because Deku also has emotions against Bakugo of what he's put him through. So
I agree. Another part of the movie that I enjoyed was, which I don't usually get watching the anime, the comedy. They had some pretty funny parts in the movie. What do you think?
Yeah, I laugh at some parts. Like I usually laugh at Todoroki, surprisingly. Like he's not one of those characters that is an obvious comic relief, but just like he's so blunt that it's funny. Like he doesn't get it. Like he doesn't get the social cues of like, oh, that's kind of funny. No, he takes it completely serious, and that makes it even more funny.
That's what I like about him. Todoroki is serious. I like that about him. That's also partly because I think of his upbringing, because Endeavor and what he did to him, and it makes him have to be serious to overcome his dad. But still, that's the appeal of Todoroki.
Yeah.
That, and he's probably the best fighter.
Okay. If he was faster, he would definitely be the best. I think he has the strongest quirk, but if he was a lot faster, he would be like the best. Yeah.
He's the best in the game, anyways.
Okay.
Well, I can keep my distance with Todoroki, and the rule is in the game that if you let anyone get close to you, if you're Todoroki, you're gonna lose.
Yeah.
So just keep your distance, use your ice as your defense and your fire as your offense, and you're damn near invincible.
Yeah, well, in the game, he's a lot faster. What I'm saying, like you can like immediately show it. In the anime and the manga, he like does it slowly. Like he has to like build it up and stuff. So if he got to that level he is in the game, or even at the same time, yeah, he would be.
So I think we've talked about this before off the podcast. The true big three, other than Rush, of course, the true big three is
Deku and Bakugo and Todoroki.
Yes, yeah. I totally agree. Especially since in the anime, Lemillion has lost his what is his first name?
It's Mirio Togata.
Mirio, yes. He has lost his quirk. I mean, it's not his fault, but they can't be the big three anymore. So
and in the next year they graduate. So
you mean the original big three?
Yeah, they're in their third year right now. So once it switches to Class 1A's second year, the big three are graduated.
See, this is the problem I had with the movie. It's only a small problem. It's no big deal, but they never really defined how far in the future it was. It definitely was in the future because of those little changes, but they never really told you how far in the future it was. Was that beyond first year? Was it into the second year?
No, it was in first year. They're still in first year, but if you've read the comic and stuff, you can point out like when it is, because there's some stuff some characters have that you're like, oh, that's gonna happen. It's after that, so you kind of have to judge. They said it was after volume 25, which is after the villain arc, so you kind of have to judge when that is.
So they're still. What is it? Summer vacation between 1 and 2, or they're still in one? They're still in year 1.
They're still in year 1. I think at that time it's around winter.
You said that you picked up some things that you thought were interesting. Go ahead. Let's talk about that for a bit.
Well, kind of the most obvious one at the beginning is Endeavor's new armor. He gets a new outfit in the next arc after the festival arc in the anime. He gets a new outfit. That was kind of nice to be like, okay, that's what it's going to look like.
Anything else that you picked up on?
Well, it was mostly new outfits and new armor. Like Deku got the new gloves, and the League of Villains have their new outfits. They get new outfits after their arc. They get their own arc in like a while, but yeah, they have their own outfits.
Okay. I'll say a plus and a minus for what I saw in the movie. The plus is I saw a little bit of philosophy in there. There was some definitely Nietzsche and the will to power in there, because 9 kind of talks about that. How power is how he will overcome. And it's almost word for word what Nietzsche said. Mm-hmm. I like that. Kind of what I didn't like was Nietzsche. 9 was kind of all for one.
Oh yeah, that was a whole thing too from the manga that I kind of forgot about. That his whole 9 thing, basically his thing is there's another villain that works with the League that's called the Doctor, and he's basically been trying to make All for One and kind of more
to remake him.
Yeah, because All for One's pretty much retired like All Might, so he's trying to remake him. So that was one of.
But to me, it came off like when they rebooted Star Wars with the Disney version, and they just recopied the first A New Hope. Well, that character is kind of just like a copy of, instead of doing you could take all quirks, I can only do 9.
Yeah, it's definitely like a downgrade of All for One, but he did use different powers than what All for One did, because All for One had like the kind of lightning thing-ish, but then 9 has the actual lightning and like the air shields, whatever. So.
Well, speaking of the lightning, when Bakugo said we used the idiot as a lightning rod. That one had me going. That really did. That was the true comic of that movie. Well, what do you think of your favorite pro hero's debut, Hawk?
Well, I was kind of worried that they were gonna like reveal too much of him because like I think the fun of Hawks is that you don't really know what he's doing. Like a lot of the characters like Deku, you can kind of figure out like, oh, what's their next course of action? Like they're the hero, what are they gonna do? The fun with Hawks is it's like you don't know what he's gonna do next. Like he's kind of like borderline, you don't know what he's gonna do. So I was kind of happy that they didn't really go into that in the movie and they just showed him as like a normal pro hero. So like everyone who knows Hawks would be like, oh, that's why he's doing this. But if you kind of just look at it with like just the anime knowledge, then you're like, oh, it's just a pro hero,
So what's his intern's name?
Tokoyami, the bird guy.
Yes, the bird guy. I think it was very revealing that when all was said and done, and the day was won, but all the heroes are the learning heroes, the younger heroes are injured or repairing themselves, resting. He's the first one that Hawk goes to. Don't worry about Deku and Bakugo, who actually pretty much saved the day by taking a 9 by themselves. Just ignore them. Go right to my intern. He's the first one I should go to. Does that speak volumes?
Yeah. I'm sure he didn't come alone. Like he just immediately went to Tokoyami. I'm sure there was people helping Deku and Bakugo, but he probably knew Tokoyami was there and he has an emotional attachment to him. So I kind of get why he would go to him first, Because he kind of, like, the interns, you kind of can, like, see him as, like, kind of like a child. So, like, Fat Gum kind of treats Amajiki and Kirishima as, like, children. So, like, Hawks just immediately went to, like, equivalent of a child,
No, I understand it. But it just, I guess what saves their necks on that one is they didn't really tell them in the movie that was the intern. You kind of had to know that. So unless you have that inside knowledge, you don't understand that he was the first one he went to. Also, the other comic point that I laughed at was when Endeavor came and gave Todoroki that big hug. I mean that and poor Todoroki. You can just tell on his face that it's like you don't want to have this happen when you're a teenager. You have your dad come around and gives you this hug, and that's exactly what he had to go through.
Okay, that was another like thing that if you read the manga you'll kind of get more. Endeavor's kind of trying to change and be a better father. So like if he didn't make that kind of these steps in the manga that he's trying to be better and he did that, it would kind of be like, why are you doing that? Like you're just trying to make him like your next successor. But like since he's trying to be a good father trying, I kind of can see why he's doing that. And Todoroki, I get why he doesn't want it, but kind of that plus the teenage rebellion to like plus the trauma that
even if you go back to the recent anime where Endeavor showed up to watch Todoroki, he was still showing his fatherly pride there when he screamed out his name, Shoto. Yeah. So I mean, even then, he was that's a little intrusive.
That
I guess.
Kind of was the beginning of it because at the end of that episode, he said like, "I'm proud of you, son." Like he's never said that before. Like he just treated Todoroki as like kind of like an experiment, to be the next All Might, like to step in his shoes, So he kind of just treated him like that and all his siblings, because Todoroki has multiple siblings, and Todoroki was like the only one that worked because he has 3 older siblings, and he was the only one that had the perfect like fire and ice. So all the
perfect combination of the mother and the father's quirks, yes,
and like. I kind of like how it wasn't just like instant, like only child. It automatically worked. He actually had other siblings that got neglected because Todoroki was like the star of the family. Even though Todoroki, I'm not saying he didn't go through his fair share, but the other children got neglected.
So what was your favorite part of the movie?
Oh, I like the part where multiple parts, and
well, let's go through them all.
I like the part when I don't know his name, the little boy that the same voice actor as Alphonse.
Alphonse.
I should just call him
From
Alphonse.
Full Metal.
Yeah. Alphonse went up to Deku and was kind of talking to him, be like, I want to be a hero, and Deku was giving him encouragement, and then Bakugo was listening in, and he was listening so hard his popsicle melted, and he kind of just looked down like, this is my life, okay. And then
Well, it was on a southern island, and it was in the middle of summer, so maybe he shouldn't have had to,
It kinda
or been paying attention
shows-
to it.
it kind of shows how much he was paying attention, though, and not just like being up there or whatever.
Yeah, he was no longer paying
listening.
attention to
Yeah, he was
his ice
listening.
cream. Yes.
And then the second part is when the older sister of the Alphonse boy kind of did the boy who cried wolf and like tricked them into thinking there was a villain. And Bakugo and Deku went up there, and then Bakugo figured it out that it was an illusion, and he kind of just like stopped and then went up to her and got really angry. And that was like bigger than the sports festival anger. Like everything went red. And like I like when he does that, it's funny.
Well, even that girl figured out that he was angry. I mean, so
I think she was well aware he got a little angry. Even Deku was kind of shaking, like, oh, that's your problem. And then I like.
well, in a way, he was right. You shouldn't, but that could have been a teachable moment, and he just totally let that pass by his anger.
I like at the beginning, like you could tell like the children don't like him because he's like angry and stuff. But by the end, like you can see like the girl who's similar to Bakugo like calls his name, and it's just like, go Bakugo, you know.
Well, it kind of shows me that he didn't really learn the lesson from when he was in the extra school, because wasn't it that they had to relate to the children, and both these had quirks, but yet he totally forgot that lesson and did not relate to the least the boy at all. Scared that boy. That boy was scared of him.
Yeah,
Bakugo.
but I feel like the boy and the girl, they were supposed to be a parallel to Deku and Bakugo when they were younger, and especially that one scene at the end where the boy ran and it showed the same light as it did when Deku ran to Bakugo when Bakugo's in the slime villain at the beginning. So it was definitely a parallel, and I can see why the girl related more, because the boy was like a sweetheart like Deku, but the girl was like all prideful. You don't need them. Like I'll protect you. That was a lot Bakugo, you know.
Oh, absolutely. I see that parallel. I think you're absolutely right on that analysis.
Yeah, and it's like they didn't really, because there's a lot of kids that are kind of in the show, which is surprising, but they kind of haven't like copied them. Like for Koda, who was in the training camp arc in season 3, that with the hat that Deku saved, he kind of hated heroes because that's kind of how his parents died. But like for her, like she didn't hate heroes, she just thought they weren't doing their job, and she could protect her brother better than any hero could.
Well, it also shows that the relation to All Might and Deku, because originally All Might was the symbol of peace, right?
Yeah.
And everyone looked up to him. Well, notice now we have 2 instances of kids, the next generation, looking up to Deku.
Yeah.
So I see that as a reflection.
Same with Eri too. I would say Eri looks up to Mirio more, but she definitely does look up to Deku too. So it's just like the next generation.
Okay, a little bit. I think part of that with the Lemillion or Mirio thing is because
he saved
he's the
her.
one. Exactly.
He
And I
saved
think
her.
that's why.
Yeah, I
My
get that.
hero
Yeah,
type of
well, Deku did the same thing to Koda. Like he never saved him. Koda wouldn't look up to heroes now, but yeah. And back to the favorite parts. The last favorite part I think was the endgame fight. I liked Deku and Bakugo work together. I always want them to work together because it's interesting how they work. It's because like they have all these built up feelings of like not liking each other, whatever, but they're actually like a pretty good team because they've known each other so long that they know what each other they're gonna do. So they kind of work together, but they kind of don't want to work together. So
I think one of them doesn't want to work with the other,
Yeah.
but I agree with you. I totally agree with you. And that was also my favorite part. I thought the ending and the battle between Nine and Deku and Bakugo was just climatic. Even though Todoroki is probably my favorite character, I did like his battle too. I still like the emotion intensity of that battle a lot. I mean, I think that is what actually made the movie.
yeah, for like the teasers and the trailers, they kind of released like that part when Nine grabbed Bakugo and Deku with the big dragon hands,
Yeah.
and then Deku was kind of like, it showed kind of him like passing out or like dying or something, and then Bakugo's face was just sheer terror, and it was like that was in the trailer, so just imagine like everyone being like, that's not okay.
Yes, that's a good little tease. And I also like the twist where you thought that something was going to happen to Deku,
Yeah.
and that he had to give up his quirk.
Yeah.
And I liked it. But didn't you say something about how that was originally planned?
Oh
to
yeah,
be
that was, they said the author of MHA, his name's Horikoshi, he said that original ending of MHA was going to be that Bakugo got one for all and Deku had to give up his powers, and it's like, that's sad. Like, we got all this time of him trying to be a hero and he gives it up for Bakugo, and like, honestly, I could see that because Deku would be the one that would do that. He would give up his dream for Bakugo to do it. And even said in the movie, like, if it was anyone, it had to be Bakugo. So even All Might was understanding, like, it would be Bakugo if it was anyone.
Okay, well, that leads me into the last part of what I want to talk about. Was it a sacrifice? If let's say that it happened, that it actually did, he did actually give up his quirk, would it have been a sacrifice?
I don't know, because I wouldn't say he wanted to, but he had to do it. Like, it was the only way those two were going to win.
Well, most people get the sacrifice wrong. A sacrifice is giving up a greater value for a lesser value. I think the greater value
was winning.
Exactly,
Yeah.
and stopping.
That's why I'm like, I don't think he wanted to do it at all, but he had to.
Well, wanting to do it is totally different from
Yeah.
whether it was a sacrifice or not. And where I get this from is in my show prep, I read a few reviews on it, and they all talk about Deku's sacrifice, but it wasn't a sacrifice. I think based on values, that ending would have been a greater value. It was a greater value to Midoriya instead of letting them win. I mean, there was and that would have been a sacrifice, letting them win. There was no. The outcome he wanted was not a sacrifice in the terms of giving up a greater value for a lesser value. That was the greatest value. Do you understand where I'm going with this? Do you agree?
Yeah.
All right. So based on your homeschooling, I always try and put a philosophical twist on this.
Yeah.
So, like Ayn Rand's The Fountainhead, characters think through their own head or they think through other people's head.
Mm-hmm.
So, what characters were thinking through their own heads and which characters were thinking through other people's heads?
Okay, let's say this off the bat. I think Bakugo and Todoroki pretty much all the time think through their own head. They don't care what people think. Like, especially Bakugo. Like, I don't think he doesn't care what everyone thinks. Like, he's going to be number one hero, Like, he doesn't care.
Well, it could be argued. I agree with you with Todoroki. But it could be argued that Bakugo does sometimes think that other people said, in the sense of his insecurities, in the sense of he doesn't want someone to get close to him, so he blocks them out.
Yeah.
So in that aspect, he is thinking through someone else's head. It's a slight mistake. I'm not saying
Yeah,
he's a totally
I know.
flawed character.
No, I know. Yeah, I get you, but he's gotten better with that because if you paid attention, he actually has friends in the show, like genuine friends, not Deku. But he's friends with Kirishima and Kaminari and Ashido and Sero. That's the acid, tape, electricity, and hardening. He's friends with them, and even
though he calls
them an idiot and stuff. But they've kind of like they've even said like sometimes like if he didn't do that, it kind of wouldn't be Bakugo. So like they've gotten used to it, and they generally like they see it as like just a wall, and they kind of just go behind that wall. Like,
Well,
hey,
good. You're tapping into what I'm saying about how he's thinking through other people's heads.
yeah,
I don't see this as a major flaw. Please do not get me wrong in
I
this.
get it.
But I do see it as an aspect of how he does care what other people think and thinks through their heads in that one aspect. I mean, when it comes to him actually, when his biggest test where he didn't think through other people's head was when he got kidnapped. And because in that aspect, he actually passed the test. He didn't allow them to do the League of
Even that the next episode, I believe, in the anime that you haven't watched, there's a little spoiler, but there's kids that in the general studies of UA that kind of talk about Bakugo and like kind of blame him for like, oh, villain attacks keep happening, it's because of you, like 1A, and like Bakugo did it, and like Bakugo listens in, and he's just kind of like, I think the one thing he does like think the other people's head is like kind of that scenario, kind of blaming him and calling him a villain. He doesn't like being called a villain.
Well, he's really not a villain.
Yeah, he's not, but he doesn't like other people calling him.
But sometimes his actions can make you think.
Yeah.
I mean, being a bully, that is kind of, at least towards some, at least Deku. I mean, we want to be specific about this. That can be villainous.
I know. But it's just like the other kids were kind of like, oh, it's kind of his fault. And then Bakugo goes,
I don't agree with that. It's not his fault. I mean, the world has bad people in it, whether it's filled with superheroes or not. It has bad people in it. And it's not his fault that there are bad people in the world.
And then, like, I think the time like he thought through his own head was like when the villains attacked him, and Shigaraki was kind of like, we think you would be a good villain and come to the villain side, whatever. And he said no. Yeah, he said no, like, I'm not going to do that.
I totally agree. That's my point, where he is a slightly flawed character in the sense that there are parts of him where he thinks through others' heads, and other times, and important times, where he doesn't think. He doesn't think through others' head. He thinks through his own head.
Yeah.
Okay, how about the other way around? What character thinks through his own head? Does his own thinking?
Well, Todoroki.
Is that the only one?
Sometimes Deku, sometimes, but
okay, let's analyze Deku for a while. I agree with you on Todoroki. He's straight shooter and thinks through his own head.
I think Todoroki definitely more than Deku, but Deku sometimes he's very nice, so don't get me wrong, he's very nice, he helps people, but I think he puts other people first a lot, so like he kind of neglects his own needs, so he kind of thinks through their head of like, not like the whole like saving someone, but like being like, I could see Deku being the person to be like, oh, like you want this seat, you can have it, I'll do it somewhere else, you know what I mean?
Oh, is that being courteous, or is that thinking through?
It's being courteous, but you know what I mean. Like,
if he values that person and then giving up that seat for them, even just values him as a human being, then he's thinking. As long as he's doing the valuing, he's thinking through his own head.
Well,
no, I'm just stating the fact. I'm not saying you're wrong. In fact, to be actually properly critical and analytical, in a way, Todoroki does think through someone else's head as well, and that's through Endeavor.
Yeah, it's Endeavor, yeah.
Because, he's concerned about what his dad says. Well, at least, not what he says, but he's concerned that he doesn't want to be like his dad.
Yeah.
So he's concerned by his dad's actions, as if that somehow is a reflection on him, and it's not. And that's one of the lessons he needs to learn. So I guess all three of them are flawed in a little way, as far as the thinking through your own head portion of it. So is there anyone else you think that thinks through their own head? I mean, those are the big three, so those are the obvious ones. But can you think of? I mean, you're the My Hero Academia expert. So, how about heroes? Are there any heroes that you think through their own heads? Pro heroes, I should say.
Ooh, I have one that doesn't.
Okay, tell me and explain.
Hawks.
He doesn't. Your favorite.
No,
this is surprising.
No, here's the thing. Why? It goes back to the whole thing I said about Deku. Like, he works with the Hero Commission, so like the Hero Commission kind of tells him what to do, and he kind of doesn't think through his own head of being like, oh, I want to do that, this is what I want to do. He kind of does it because he thinks he has to, so that kind of Like, he doesn't do it because he wants to. He does it because other people want him to, and he has to do it.
The government in this case,
Yeah.
the hero commission.
Yeah.
You see, I'm glad you brought that up because it just shows you another flaw in the government. They're the ones who screwed up in this movie and put these kids in this island.
It's the Hero Commission who did it.
That's my point.
Yeah.
Once again, it's the government who thinks they know the right answers. Always, always, always get it wrong. I mean, I would say the vast majority of the time get it wrong. And this is a fine example of it. I mean, how stupid is that?
Yeah,
that you
that's
don't
pretty
send at least
stupid.
one pro hero there.
Yeah.
You just let all these kids go by themselves. I mean, if that got out just by itself on its own,
That would be bad.
to the league or the 9 that weren't part of the league that found out or exploited on their own. You always exploit your enemy's
safety
weakness.
issue.
Well, that's the weakness.
Well, here's the thing about that I also don't like about the Hero Commission, because I know exactly what they would do in that situation. They would be like, oh, it's UA's fault. They did it, even though the Hero Commission are the one who did it.
Once again,
They would blame someone
the
else. You know?
Government always chooses a scapegoat. Always. And that's a grand example of it.
And for Hawks, like, if what he does, like, it's out or whatever, the Hero Commission would 100% throw him under the bus, even though they're the ones who tells him what to do all the time. They would 100% be like, he did it all. Like, it's his problem.
So, Ryan, we were talking about how characters either think through their own head or think through someone else's. What do you think? What characters do you think through their own heads? And I brought it up because of Ayn Rand, the Fountainhead. So, what do you do? Can you give any examples of characters that think through their own heads, and then ones that don't in My Hero Academia?
Well, I
don't
mean
mean to put you on a spot.
No, it's all right. I mean, this movie's amazing. I really like everything I've been hearing about it, but that's a joke. I mean, Deku, I mean, you know, he thinks through his own head and, like, kind of blocks out all the other stuff that he's supposed to be hearing and trying to listen to his own thoughts to become, like, the next, you know, best hero that he wants to be.
Yeah, I think he truly values being the best hero, the best he can be. And in that aspect, he does think through his own head, absolutely.
And Bakugo, I mean, he too, even if it's not might not end the best, even though it does, you know, he's obviously one of the main characters too, but, you know, he definitely doesn't think of, he thinks what he thinks is the right idea, and he's not a bad guy. He doesn't want to hurt anybody.
With the exception of the bullying of Deku, he's not a bad guy. He's not.
He's a little power hungry.
We talked about this earlier. That he proved the test of it when he got kidnapped and chose to be good.
Yeah, that's a big like that whole arc. You know, really shows a lot of character development with a lot of them, like, you know, Deku and Bakugo and all that stuff.
Well,
so
Deku showed his, well, as far as a hero, the very first time when he went to rescue Bakugo, and he didn't even have a quirk at that time.
Yeah, episode 1. Yeah.
That one there is a good example of him thinking through his own head, because he didn't do it as a sacrifice. He thought Bakugo was a value, and to give that value up, that would have been a sacrifice, and that's why he rushed in there to do it. I mean, so well, we also brought up the fact that I did a lot of read a lot of reviews, and they all talked about the sacrifice that Deku makes, and I just don't see it as a sacrifice. I don't see any of these heroes, whether pro or the amateurs, sacrificing. I think they're doing what they want to do based on a value structure.
Yeah, because, I mean, the whole point of the show, too, is becoming number one and being the ultimate hero and stuff. But you kind of realize, even at this point, and in the movie where it might be different, it's not really the case. Like, you just want to be the best hero you can be, you know?
No, I think that is the case. Exactly right. But in the movie, they have to work together to show that.
Yeah.
I mean, Bakugo and Deku had to work together in order to overcome
That's how every
the
arc
nine.
always is.
Well, I think they wanted to really put Deku and Bakugo together because they really haven't worked together.
And they just had that fight before, too.
Yes,
you know?
They're actually working against each other in that
Yeah.
fight, absolutely. But in my opinion, those two aren't the best. My opinion is Todoroki. However, Bakugo and
He's
Deku...
fighting with himself.
Bakugo, well, those are the true big three. of the underclass.
Yeah.
But anyways, Deku and Bakugo had to work together to overcome this problem, and the ultimate sacrifice, so called, that he makes at the end, where he supposedly gives Bakugo his quirk. Once again, I think he did that because he valued winning and all the people on the island, and it wasn't a sacrifice. He was doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I think he was acting on principle.
From what I could gather, that makes sense.
Well, I want to thank Autumn so much for joining us here. I so appreciate you coming and doing this, and I guess you are the Chains of Reason My Hero Academia specialist and expertise. And I guess now the third co-host. Yeah, so I guess you've been promoted.
That's what
too.
I would say. I mean, what, 3 episodes? 4?
Yes, this is the third episode, if you include the Full Metal Alchemist episode. So it's just too bad that show's not around still.
Okay.
10 years. It's been 10 years.
I don't care. It doesn't matter.
It's not, you can go back to it. It's still great to watch.
Mm-hmm.
No, it is, but I like the new. We together, Autumn and I watch the new My Hero every week. It's a good bonding moment. I wish I could bond over Full Metal too.
There's always going to be shonen and stuff like that. So
when it comes to that, there's so much anime in so little time. It's like video games.
Oh, yeah.
So many video games, so little time.
Yeah.
Worse than that, so many books, so many time.
There's so much media.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for joining us. I so appreciate you listening to us. Once again, you can get a hold of us at chainsofreasonpodcast.com. And go ahead, Ryan, plug your podcast.
Yeah, since DJ joined in on the Bindside chat, that's my podcast, video games, anime, and all that stuff. And yeah, we'll have to figure out how to get Autumn on that. We'll do an episode.
Just talk about My Hero, and she'll be there.
I mean, it is going. I mean, I'm sure we can get something going with just a bunch of different topics as well. So, yeah, check it out.
Oh, great. Well, thanks for listening. And I'll end how I always end. How can anything be enlightened if the truth is so poorly lit?